What is a tariff? It's cool to ask, really, especially with Donald Trump back in the White House. Now, simply put, a tariff is a tax on imported goods. But what does that actually mean? Let's try this. Say these T-shirts are sold by a U.S. company, some hypothetical but obviously super cool clothing brand, and you have to have one of these T-shirts. But these shirts aren't actually made in the United States. They're produced by an international company, which is outside the U.S. Now, that means the U.S. company needs to import the shirt that you covet. Now, for the sake of hypothetical, let's just say for $20 a pop, which the U.S. company then turns around and sells for, say, $60 each, which is an insane price to pay for a T-shirt. But hey, look, you do you. But what happens if the U.S. government imposes a tariff on your coveted T-shirt? Why? Well, historically, there are two triggers for tariffs. One, protect a domestic industry. In this case, maybe the U.S. T-shirt industry is getting crushed. And two, raise government revenues. Regardless of the reason, let's just say the government has now imposed a 10% tariff on our T-shirts, which means that the American company that imports the same T-shirt, it costs $22. Now, history tells us the American company isn't just going to eat that cost. Margins, they matter. So they pass that cost on to you, the consumer. Now, I get it. You have to have this shirt. So a couple extra bucks, no big deal. But you're asking about tariffs for one reason. President Donald Trump, a guy who fervently believes in tariffs, so much so that he's proposed tariffs across the board on every imported good from anywhere. Universal tariffs. Now, think about that couple extra bucks you were cool with shelling out for that trendy T-shirt. What if it wasn't just the shirt, but everything imported that you buy?
In many ways, this is not a surprise to China. It's something that President Trump talked about on the campaign trail. And in many ways, China has been preparing for this tariff threat, expanding its export base beyond the United States to a wider branch of countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, even Russia. Kind of a preemptive move, but also part of its effort to establish itself as a leader in a new world order. As far as retaliation, what will China do? Tariffs are always a possibility, but right now the Chinese economy is dealing with a lot of struggles. The economy is shaky. People are wary and leery about spending money. China's also dealing with trade tension in Europe. So tariffs may not necessarily be the route of action it takes. China does have something working in its favor, and that's its factory system. The factories in China are big, they are sprawling, they're also very nimble and can adjust quickly. So, for example, if a clothing company wants to change the color or style of an item, it's something that China can do quickly, and that gives it a lot of value. In addition, China makes a lot of products that Americans depend on every day, things such as clothing, electronics, as well as furniture, everyday household items. So in that sense, China does have perhaps the ability to leverage its supply chain. Mark Stewart, CNN, Beijing.
Canada says it feels like a country targeted and scorned by the United States. The reaction here was visceral, emotional, but also clear-headed about the devastating challenges ahead for the Canadian economy. And keep in mind, Donald Trump is ripping up an agreement that he signed with Canada in terms of trade. Canada is now coming to terms with the fact that he no longer wants that relationship. Listen.
I don't think there's a lot of Americans who wake up in the morning saying, oh, damn Canada. Oh, we should really go after Canada. We're there as friends, as partners. We always have been, we always will be. Yes, we've had our differences in the past, but we've always found a way to get past them. As I've said before, If President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us.
And so Canada will retaliate about $155 billion in total Canadian. $30 billion of that will come on Tuesday, the 25% tariffs to match the Trump administration tariffs. The bulk of that, though, will come in 3 weeks. Canada saying it wants businesses some time to prepare. But keep in mind here, this will be a losing battle for everyone in terms of consumers and businesses that now try to adjust. And the bottom line is the president himself has said that he will now retaliate because Canada retaliated in turn. This is the beginning of what could be a very nasty trade war, and it could also rebalance the trade relationship between the United States and so many of its allies. Paul Newton, CNN, Ottawa.
Larry, help us understand, there's now not only the threat of rising prices for Americans, but in terms of global, a trade war, is this kind of the starting shot? What does that look like to you?
It's before you get to what anybody else does, there's higher prices for American consumers, and there's higher input costs for American producers, making production everywhere else more attractive. And then how can these countries not respond? And they're going to respond by favoring European products over American products. They're going to respond by favoring Asian products over American products. That's not going to work to our advantage either. They're going to expand by welcoming investment from other countries rather than the United States. This is done with no context. Whether there's legal authority for it or not is something I will leave to the trade lawyers. I think it's very much in doubt when there's no broad economic emergency and when there's no evidence that the goods being tariffed have been heavily subsidized. But I'll leave that to the trade lawyers. But it seems to me that this is going to make every other country want to separate from us because of the kind of tactics that we are engaging in. So I just do not understand why this kind of economic warfare is good strategy. And if you're going to use economic warfare as a strategy, I don't understand why you're doing it more to Canada and Mexico than to China. And I don't understand why our initial targets of attacks are Canada and Mexico. This is just a bizarre and I think quite dangerous economic strategy for our country.